guys. Thanks so much for joining us. Hi, Amie.
Hello. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Yeah. So we are going to be chatting about coaching pet parents through functional movement video analysis, getting tongue-tied there, which I'm really excited about because that's like, it's very relevant to what we're doing at the moment. A lot of us are working online. So if you guys can hear us, welcome. If you're live with us, welcome. Let me know that you can hear us. So post in the comments where you are in the world. If audio is good and video is good, let us know. And let us know what your interest is in today's topic. So coaching pet parents through functional movement video analysis. Are you guys doing online consultations? Are you using video analysis to look at movements? Let us know how you are already using this in your practice and what are the challenges that you're facing with it. And so before we jump into this topic, I know that you guys know that we are so excited for the Vet Rehab Summit. It's coming up quickly, sort of. And what we... It's only in November, but it feels like it's coming quickly. So we're talking about research as much as we can. Our theme this year is research meets reality. And I think that is so important for us because the more we focus on being evidence-based, the more challenges we come up to in being evidence-based, right? Research doesn't always translate so well into practice. So how do we navigate those waters as we become more and more evidence-based, as we implement more research in our practices? How do we do that? So that's really what we're talking about at the summit this year. And to get us started, Amie, I want to ask you a question. I want to know from you, what is the research article that you quote most often, or what is the research that's made the biggest impact on your practice and way of thinking?
So that's, it's a great question, and it's always changing because I'm trying to pay close attention to the research, even as a clinician. But a lot of my practice has really focused on neuroplasticity and really updating what I do and how I approach all of my patients. And there's an article that was published in 2018, and it's by Christina Loy and Florence Barrère. They're German researchers, and they did a review on rehab after spinal cord injury and looking at animal models and how it influences and helps us to understand exercise-induced neuroplasticity. And as I read it for the first time, I was like, oh, wow, highlight, wow, highlight this. And then I thought, after finishing it, I'm like, wow, this really does merge with what I'm thinking, what I'm seeing, how I'm approaching my cases. And then every time I read it, like a glimmer of light goes on and more questions pop up. But I think that's part of, understanding the research and processing the research and then, going a little bit deeper with it. So I'm always fascinated with the approaches that come back around, the things that we did 20 years ago that, other therapists did 50 years ago, how we approach that and make it real. And then we try to explain it, and we're able to explain it better with the research that we have and the technology we have within the research setting. So so it's a really exciting article. It's pretty lengthy and a lot of detail, but it is a review, which is nice. So it really processes it all for us. So I'll post a link actually in the chat for you guys so you can take a look at it. And it is free, which is even better. I'm always, looking at these abstracts and things, and I'm like, oh, I don't have access to it, and try and Google Scholar and all that. And I think it's a bit of a challenge as a clinician sometimes, but it's really nice to see something like this out there. So yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Amie. Hi to all the Australians with us today. It's so cool to have you guys. That's really cool. All right, I'm going to change our screen back to what it should be, and going to just remind you guys to please mark your diaries for the 13th of November for the Vet Rehab Summit. You want to be there live, okay? Don't bargain on watching this as a recording. Come and join us live on the 13th of November. Block the whole day out. It's Vet Rehab Summit Day. You're going to want to be there. It's going to be amazing. Okay, cool. So let's jump into, functional movement video analysis and coaching out pet parents. I really want to know from you guys that are live with us, do you use video analysis? What do you do with it? And are you having online consultations? How are they working? What challenges are you running into? What have you learned since implementing them? Just share with us your knowledge and your experience so far using this new kind of way of interacting with our patients. So Amie, do you want to share with us just as an introduction what it is that you're doing at the moment with coaching pet parents through functional movement analysis?
Sure. It's something that I've used for quite a long time, especially with sports medicine cases. And even when I was in the clinic working with them directly, I found that seeing the animal move in their home environment or in sport is a completely different perspective on the pet and how I see them clinically. And it's almost like a CSI type of thing where you're reconstructing the issue, the problem that you're seeing them for in rehabilitation. And so, I love that I can use that analysis of their movement to substantiate what I'm doing in the clinic, the goals that we're setting, to see the progress of the patient. And what's awesome too are the free applications that we have where we can break things down and we can look at the movement in slow motion. We can look at angles. We can look at two videos side by side and compare the two. So I use it definitely clinically, but now that I do things more remotely, I use it even more so, almost in a real-time way where I'm reviewing a video of maybe exercises or functional mobility and giving feedback to the handler or the pet parent back home. And it's really taught me a lot with regards to, how to view things, how I use my hands and how I can give my hands to someone in another part of the world, honestly, so that they can help their pet move better. So I use it as an evaluation tool. I use it to progress therapy. I use it to reevaluate down the road. I use it in orthopedics, sports medicine, neurology, whatever. So it really is a key component of my toolbox now.
It's very exciting. So are you essentially doing all your consults online at the moment, or are they these are essentially online consultations, right? Are they just forming a part of what you're doing?
They are now. I'm in an unusual situation in that I'm from the US and I moved to the Netherlands about 1.5 years ago. And I wanted to maintain some of my clinical practice back in the US. So I've maintained some relationships and reviewing videos with clients back in the States. And those were ones that I had my hands on, that I saw on a regular basis. And that actually grew to the point of doing consultations with people I'd never met before. And I think all of us were kind of pushed into that clinical room online with our clients with COVID and, having restrictions and lockdowns. I've seen some of that. I've been able to step away from some of it, and I've been able to really screen the cases that I see through this online consultation, because I know in my mind and in my heart that hands-on is the better way for some, but for others, it's not an option, whether they're more remote, whether they have, physical issues themselves or their pets and unable to go to a clinic. I'm getting feedback now to knew that the waiting lists and lines for people to get their pets in, whether for surgery or for rehabilitation, are huge. And part of that is because of all the lockdowns, but also, this influx of, adopting new dogs and puppies and cats, and, and life happens, and we get injured, and we need those rehab, facilities to accommodate those cases. So I use this, modality more directly now. It's almost 100% of what I do because I'm not clinically practicing in the Netherlands.
Okay, that's so interesting that, it wasn't actually COVID that forced you into this position,
No.
but it was kind of a natural progression of your life, right? Life happens, and we have to, our practices and what we do needs to adapt to that. And I really love that. So for those of you who are watching, I really want to know, are you guys doing online consultations? Are you using them? What value are they adding or not adding? Like, what is your experience with this? So Amie, what are the advantages really that you've been able to take from shifting to consulting online like this?
Well, in my former clinical practice in the Boston area in the US, I was in a rehab facility within a referral center. And then I started working mobile so that I was seeing my clients in their homes. And so I loved that feeling of seeing the pet in their normal home atmosphere and environment, and seeing what those problems were, and how to kind of problem solve and come up with solutions for the pet owners at home. And now what I find, and even if I were in the clinic, I think it's a great way for me to jump in and see what things look like in real life, and anticipate the problems that the owners might have, whether it's based on the home environment or the external environment, or how a harness or a lead fits the patient. So I really can see things and look from the outside and give very timely feedback. I think that's the other advantage, is the timeliness by which I'm able to, look at things and analyze things and really get feedback to the owner, rather than having 2 weeks between appointments or whatever else that might be. I'm constantly working with those pet owners and giving them feedback as soon as possible. So those are 2 advantages for sure. There's certainly disadvantages too, but I think that it's a tool that I wouldn't forego. I think now that I'm accustomed to it and utilizing it on a regular basis, it's not something that I will leave in the closet when I go back to clinical practice. I'll definitely continue to utilize it.
Okay, so if you're saying continuing to utilize it, you're talking about the video analysis, like patients taking video or clients taking videos of their dogs in the home environment, and you looking at and analyzing that. So
absolutely.
So kind of in my mind, where like there are online consultations, and that's part of it, but there are also like actually the analysis of the videos. So hi to Erica and Priya who have joined us. Priya, you have a mobile rehab practice. That's really cool. So you're in that home environment. I love it. And it's quite interesting, Amie, to hear your kind of progression, because it's almost backwards, right? Most of us start mobile and then progress to working in a referral center or in a specialist facility. So it's cool that you did that the other way around, and have now moved to a remote consultation. That's really cool. I like it. But we have all had videos that clients have brought us that have been horrendous and not very useful. And when you look at it and you're like, what am I supposed to see? So what are some of the disadvantages of working like this, of using video analysis and of working with online consultations remotely?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I'm just imagining the camera taking a video of the ground and, and it just making you dizzy, right, as you're watching it. I think that the first thing is, I step back and I say, oh, okay, can I find a horizontal and a vertical so that I can gain a perspective on the pet? So, many times what I try to do is encourage the pet owner to send me a video that is at least has an appropriate perspective. It's hard for them sometimes too, depending on how many extra hands they have around the house. And, if they're trying to catch something like a, seizure behavior or a tremor or something that's just an instant, it may be difficult. And sometimes I'm not seeing what the pet owner is seeing through that video, depending on the quality of it. There are certainly tricks to get around that. And, I've had pet owners who send me minutes and minutes and minutes of videos, and that's fine. But, the processing takes some time too. So it is really time intensive, until you're doing it very, very regularly and becoming very familiar with the client and the pet, in that you can pinpoint things. I think another challenge too is, how the pet owner submits the video to you. So do they send it to you by Facebook Messenger? Do they send it in a Dropbox? Is it something you can download and you can manipulate? Are we losing some quality through the manipulation, or are we losing quality through the downloading ability? And most of our pet parents are pretty tech savvy now. I think they've been forced to be through COVID, but some still have challenges with that. And getting everyone on the same platform can be tough too. And I think one of the other challenges is having that personal relationship with the pet parent through a screen, through physical reports, through our voices, and making them comfortable with you, so that, they can be honest with you about their experience and how they're feeling. And this is where the second part of coaching comes into play, where, we're really working as an advocate for the pet parent and working with them to address their goals, not so much our rehabilitation goals or our medical goals, but their goals directly as it relates to their life and their relationship with their pet.
Okay, I really like that. So do you have a checklist that or some kind of guide that you send them for what kind of video you need and how they should be taking it before you,
Yeah, I do. I start out very, very basic, asking them to, show me, because I don't want to overwhelm them, with too many videos. I want to get to the point and really focus on what their goals are and what their challenges are. So I'll give them a guide with regards to the movements that I want to see. So it might be a down to a sit to a stand and back. It might be just walking, on a level surface. I'm going to ask them to make sure that they have the whole body in the frame, that there's a horizontal and a vertical that I can kind of relate to in the video, but I try not to give them too much criteria, because when it becomes more work, the compliance is less so, and then I don't have anything to work with. So I try to keep it simple for them. And then, once I've done my preliminary evaluation and consultation with them, then I may ask for other things. And by educating them and coaching them, I'm helping them to understand what I'm looking for, some key components of movement, some key, performance indicators that I want them to maybe go back and take another video of. the key part, I think, of using this tool is not, me looking at the video and circling things and highlighting things and making a list of problems that I'm seeing, but it's giving the client a solution to the problem, letting them understand what it is that I'm looking for, those key components that are going to make a difference long term. And this is how it circles back to that research question that you have. The more research we have, the better we're going to know what those key performance indicators are, what those key components of movement are, so that we can actually make a difference in the mobility in our pets at home.
Okay, so walk us through an example of that. So like, if I have a dog with elbow arthritis and I send you a video and you've asked me to send you a walk in a straight line and a sit to stand and a down, what are you then going to do with me? And maybe we should just look at Priya's question first. What are the type of rehab scenarios that you find could benefit from remote consultation? So that ties in, but let's go with Priya's first. So what kind of rehab scenarios benefit from remote consultations?
Yeah, so, there's the obvious when the pet owner can't get to a rehab facility, they're stuck at home for whatever reason, the facility has a long waiting list, they know the importance of getting started with rehab as soon as possible. I would say that many of the referrals that I get are from mobile surgeons in the US. There's a large group that utilizes my services, and I do a lot of follow-up education post-operatively. So prior to starting rehabilitation, after surgery, in that period of time when the owner maybe is taught, I want you to do range of motion, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. And they need a little check with regards to, am I doing it right? Am I doing it safely? They gave me all these handouts and they showed me post-operatively, but I'm so overwhelmed and I don't know that I'm doing the right thing. So that's where my services may come into play in helping them to evaluate, the safety of the technique that they're using, just kind of coaching them along the way with regards to those activities. I find also, as we're discontinuing rehabilitation or maybe seeing them just on a wellness type of visit, when the owner is seeing something really funny that they can't understand or they can't explain or hasn't improved, those videos are really helpful to me as well. The sports medicine cases, certainly, but it's funny because pet owners, trainers who are doing agility or, other animal sports, their perspective is completely different. So they're looking at things from like a strategy. They're looking at the big picture. And I want to look at that little bit of movement, before, when they're lifting off before they do a jump, or, just honing in on maybe the hock or the tarsus when they're doing a weave. And so I really have to take that big picture and that huge amount of information and really focus it in, for the pet parent, depending on the diagnosis, the problem, everything else. So it's sometimes difficult to look at it big and then funnel it in, and not jump to conclusions when there are issues. So I do have to sometimes step back and say, okay, I'm going to watch this beginning to end. I'm not going to slow it down. I'm not going to zoom in. I'm just going to step back and look and see what comes to mind, and what, I see as challenges, as strengths in this video. And then, maybe reviewing the history, the concerns that the pet parent might have, and then honing in and looking at these finite details. In doing all of this, I'm coming to this list in my head of the key components of movement that I'm looking for based on a diagnosis, based on the parent's concern, based on complaints that they might have with regards to their quality of movement and quality of life.
We have another question from Barbara, and I actually had the same question. So she wants to know, how do you manage to protect yourself from too much private or emotional strain? Like in practice, it's a bit easier. They come in and they go, and they're not sending you messages all the time. And she says you give the little finger and then they take the whole hand. And I was wondering the same thing when you said that you could help them more quickly, because if you're doing that, are you essentially on your phone chatting to them whenever they're looking for you? And how does that impact you? Does that not become quite overwhelming and quite time consuming? And at the end of the day, also, how do you charge for that? That would be the other kind of question around that. So
yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, I think, burnout is a huge thing. And I think those of you who are in a clinical practice, whether going mobile to clients' homes or within the clinic, it's hard to manage everything within the clinic, but then outside too, when they're calling, they're emailing, they may be reaching out to you in off hours or when they don't have their appointment. And so I've really looked at it as a consultation as being one subset, and then more of a concierge type of approach, less of a case manager, but really being available to them. I wouldn't say 24/7 because that's not realistic. That's not human, really. But making myself available to them on a very regular basis. And I think the key certainly is communicating with them what that looks like, what that means. And so with many of my clients, I say, I want you to send me videos every week. So I want you to send me videos on Mondays. I promise that I will review those videos on Tuesdays or on Thursdays, so I'm almost assigning them a review time and trying to make it timely and get that information back to them as soon as possible, so that it's all about motor learning too. So if they're doing something wrong, I don't want them to continue to do it the wrong way. I want to correct them as soon as possible. And so in those relationships, I actually have a consultation fee, and then I have a review fee that I charge on a monthly basis. And so I continue to charge that as long as they need me. And it includes a certain number of hours or certain number of videos that I'm going to review on a weekly basis. So this helps me to budget my time and my energy, and they know too that there are times when I'm not going to be available. But I do look at what I do as being more of a concierge type of service, and it works well for me now. But if I were in the clinic, it could be a bit overwhelming, and having a little too much interaction with those pet parents and too high expectations for them. So I found that I actually have a couple of relationships that work really, really well, in that there are therapists on the ground in their local area who see the case maybe once every 3 weeks, once every 2 weeks. And then I do a consultation once a month. I do those follow-up concierge analyses, and we all work together as a team. And it's a really amazing dance, you could say, in that, we're all seeing similar things and different things, and we have different ideas, and we bounce ideas off of each other. It's a really great collaborative perspective that we have with these cases. So, I think I'm not doing this to step on the toes of the rehabbers on the ground, because I think that hands-on, there's nothing that can replace that. But to provide support when those rehabbers on the ground can't be there for those people who are maybe a little more needy. They need sometimes that handhold, not just holding on to the pinky finger.
I really like that. I think that, so essentially having a clear idea of what it looks like so that they are clear on what is okay and not okay, if I can say it like that. But essentially, if we give them the boundaries, then they are happy to work within that. And I really like that idea. And having that kind of continuous support, I love that. There are so many who would benefit from that. And going into a practice can be impractical for many reasons. It could be not available, as you've already said. So cutting down on that time in practice, in clinic for the patient, and capitalizing on what you can do remotely can really be helpful for an owner. Like, for example, I would love that as an owner. That would be absolutely heavenly to me, because I'm very far away from any kind of facility. So, and I'm really great online. So whatever I can do online, I do. Erica says that she usually sends sample videos to watch so that they can make better videos. And I think that's a great idea.
Absolutely.
And if I'm not mistaken, last year we spoke about Ashley Foster has a program, and I forget the name now because I just thought of it, but it's that canine home exercise program. It might actually be called that. And I think she added videos for movement analysis, so that you can send those to your owners and say, this is what I need, and they can have a good example. And that's really helpful, I think. And then we have someone else who's joined us from Italy. Welcome. And they want to know, do you use some app or specific PC program to analyze videos?
Yeah, I do. I actually, as a physical therapist, I did a lot of running analysis as well. And so I got comfortable with an app called Huddle, Hudl. It's Huddle Approach, I think. So it's a sports medicine app or a sports training or coaching app. And I have it on my phone. I have it on the computer. It's free to start. If you want, obviously, more capabilities, you could subscribe. But I found that it's super easy for me to use. What I like about it is that I can do my analysis and I can record my voice and record like what I'm drawing on the screen, and then share that analysis with the pet owner so they can see what it is that I'm seeing, and they can hear my analysis kind of not real time, but they can hear it after the fact. And then that might bring up more questions for them. If I were with them personally, I would sit there with the screen and show them and share with them what I'm seeing, rewinding and scanning and opening up the screen more. So I find that that's a really helpful teaching tool and coaching tool for the pet owner. There's another called Coach's Eye, which is out there also, I think, also free to start, but again, or maybe a free trial, and then you can go a little deeper. So it just depends on how comfortable you are with these types of things. I don't want to get bogged down in the technology. I think the technology can help us, but I think too much, you're hiring another person to analyze all your videos. It's not a good clinical tool. It's holding you back from actually doing what you do best, which is, working with the pet owner and treating the pet and helping them to move better. So again, the analysis is not really the tool. It's the solution or the ideas that you have after the analysis that really is going to benefit the pet owner. They're going to look at the screen and say, oh, wow, that's really cool. But what does this mean? What do we need to do with this? And I think in the end, that's what we need to ask ourselves. It's great. And, it's fun to look at these things, but what do we do with that information once we have it?
Exactly. That's what it's about, right? It doesn't help that we have the objective outcome measures but what do we do with them once we have that information? What do we do? And for me, I love that about videos is that you have that kind of that objective thing that you can look back on and say, this is how we sat 2 months ago. This is how we sat in week 3. This is how we sat in week 8. How are we progressing and what is changing, and how you can measure if your interventions are working, right? Which is at the end of the day what it's about. And having that kind of clear thing that the owner can see, they can see what it is. It also empowers your owner, right? Because as you're showing them what you're seeing, they start to see more in their day to day. And I'm sure that some of them are coming back to you and saying, oh, my dog did this, this, and this. And it's not in the videos, but that's what they observed at home. And they know that you're looking for that. And so they can give you that feedback because they've learned to look for it. And that's really powerful. That's enabling them to see things before they become a problem, to look at their dogs in a different way. Amazing, amazing.
It is, and one of the stories that I have that I absolutely love this, and asking a pet owner to do this exercise and that exercise, and take a video of it, and they send it to me, and then down the road when I've taught them what I want to see or the outcome that I want, and then I see the pet owner in the video move their hand where I would put my hand, like, and correct something that I would have done. And it's like, oh, yes, this is exactly what we want. It's so exciting. And it's beyond like the ownership of doing the therapy. It's more about giving them, and like you said, empowering them to be confident, to manipulate, to change, to move, to assist, whatever it is, with their pet. And I think the bond between them and their pet is that much closer. When I'm applauding what they're doing and how they're problem solving and strategizing, that is really completing the loop, and that's when I feel like, okay, yes, I've done my job. I've taught you, what to look for, how to correct it, how to be aware of these things and these concerns. And, and hopefully we're precluding injury and other issues down the road because we're really empowering and educating those pet owners.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that probably for the dogs, they love that as well because they're getting something different from their pet parent that they weren't getting before. They're getting a different focus, a different kind of touch, a different kind of observation, and a different relationship. So I think that empowering them in that way, and removing ourselves a little bit from that, like physically from that equation, helps to empower and strengthen that bond in a completely new way. And that's amazing. That's, like you say, if we can have that and see that change, how rewarding is that?
Absolutely.
So how have owners or pet parents responded to this? What is their feedback? How do they feel? How do they feel about it?
It's funny because I think when I first started doing this and Zooming with clients that I had back in the States, it was like this funny, awkward thing. Okay, so think back, beginning of lockdown, the first Zoom call you did with someone who you normally would meet for coffee or, go for a walk with. It's like, this is really weird, And so we had that kind of funny thing to get over. But, I think after we all got used to talking to screens and our pets got used to us talking to no one in the room, I think we got a little more comfortable with it. And, so many of the pet owners, I would say that they're actually more comfortable. It's almost like it's like a journal or a diary. Like they're able to vocalize and verbalize things that they probably wouldn't in a consultation in the room with their veterinarian or with a rehab clinician, because they're letting me into their lives a little more directly, a little bit more open. And especially when we're doing the online consults, kids running through the room, the doorbell rings, there's an Amazon delivery, whatever, it's real life. And so I think that I just got a text. So, it's the same type of thing, right? And so I think that we've let go of a lot of that, just like we've let go of a lot of privacy over this period of time. We're a little bit more open and the pet owners that I'm working with, they know more about me as a person than they would if I were in the clinic or even coming to their home and working with their pet. So it's definitely more real life. And so I think it's allowed them to open up and be honest. And sometimes we share tears, and I wish I could give them a hug through the screen, but I can't. But just by verbalizing that, they know, they know that they have 100% of my attention. They know that we're focused on the same end goal, and that in itself is really empowering and really a positive thing. So it's, talking to each other on screens, though we don't want to admit it, it is part of our lives now. And it's very much a part of our future too. I think it's made that big, big world that much smaller and all of us that much closer.
Isn't that interesting that it kind of has achieved the opposite of what we would have thought it would, right? Because we're a little bit more disconnected like this, sitting behind a screen. We can't really see each other's body language, you can't see all the nuances and the details. And but it's kind of like you're straight in my living room, and if the dogs jump up and go crazy, then I have to tell you that someone's outside. And I have to go.
That's just the way it is. Yeah. It's funny because a lot of what I do now too, I do a lot of teaching, and I had planned on doing a lot of teaching in Europe, just with our transition here. Unfortunately, a lot of that teaching, that live teaching, was canceled. So a lot of it ended up as webinars, and, specific webinars where I knew there were, 50 or 60 people on that Zoom, but all I saw was their little black screens with their name across it and everything muted. And I said, the last couple that I've done, I said, you know what, turn the videos on. I don't care what you look like. I just need that feedback, right? I need that interaction. And, rather than preaching to, my dog sitting in the corner, I need that interaction. And you're right, that distance that we've created, that's essential, and that distance through the technology, it's actually brought us closer. I feel like, social media, what it is, I feel closer to a lot of people all over the world now, whether through one-on-one coaching or, advising them and working with them through different Facebook groups and things too.
It's so interesting. I have to wonder what the long-term mental health repercussions are going to be. What are we going to have in a couple of years' time? How are people going to feel? So Priya has a question. Do you demonstrate techniques during your consultation for them to follow? Example, do you show them stretching or passive range of motion or specific exercises, or do you send them a video on how to do that?
I do a bit of both, because I feel like everyone learns in a different way. They need some feedback. So many times I try to do a demonstration. I try to have a video prepared for them to send to them. If they send me a video of what they're doing, then I might make some notations on that video, whether verbally or with the little sketch pad pen. I do lots of pictures, lots of videos and things. So I think it's important to give them timely feedback. So if I'm doing a Zoom call with them or a FaceTime, I'm giving them feedback as they're doing it or immediately afterwards, but then I'm following up with something that they can refer to, which I think is also very important.
Okay. And do you use like an exercise program, like the Canine exercise program, or there's another one that's new, that's in a trial period, which is very exciting. So there are actually quite a few of those available now, that you can send home exercise programs, videos, good descriptions. Do you use anything like that, or do you kind of have your own database that you've created?
So that is a really good question. I'm going to probably be very unpopular here by saying no, I don't. I've had experience subscribing to, exercise programs in human practice. And what I found, and this is just maybe my style, I always had to manipulate that. I would have a picture, I would have a video, I would have a description, thinking that it was saving me a ton of time. And I was always, crossing things out. And this was back in the day where we didn't have all of this technology, right? I'm that old. So, we had drawn stick figures and I had to cross through instructions and no, don't do this. And no, it's this side. So I found that I'm very, very personalized and very direct about how I give instructions. And so I have things kind of sketched out. I have my own library that I've kept. But I always am manipulating things and changing things and making them very specific to the pet parent that I'm working with directly. So I do, but I don't. I think if I were working in a very high volume clinic, I would. And I would have to, I think just for my own sanity. But because of what I do and how I do it now, because it's definitely more personalized and more direct and more individualized, I have to work with it that way.
I'd love your guys' feedback on this. Do you use an exercise program or some kind of shortcut? Can you have your own library of YouTube videos that you use to share to your owners? I'd love to know if you guys do that at all, because I've kind of found the same thing as you, Amie. For the very few handful of patients that I see, I kind of have tried to create some videos that I can add to a library, but then I always feel like, but I don't want you to do this like reflex exercise. How many different ways could you do it, right? I'm like, but this isn't going to work for your horse. You need to do it this way instead. And then like, well, now I've made a video that I can share with one person.
Right. It is funny too, because we talk about, how much we educate and teach pet parents and pet owners, and yet how much do they teach us, right? And the pets themselves, how much do they teach us? And so, when you do those reflex exercises and you have a video of you doing it, and then the pet responds differently, that's something that can help you help someone else down the road. So I find a lot of value in it, but I do find that I want the pet parents to be as efficient as possible. Their time is so important, for them to continue to do the same exercise program week after week after week. It's A, not meaningful to them. B, it's not accomplishing what I want to accomplish in rehabilitation. It's not helping them to meet their goals. So, so to give them one or two or three, maybe very directed, focused activities and progressing those and changing them over time, depending on what the pet does and how they respond to it. I think that's a better use of my time and theirs as well.
So Priya says she doesn't use the programs and she is in the process of making her own so that the clients can do it the way that she does it. So with you both on this.
Yes.
I really think that the programs are very valuable. And I think that if I had a higher client load, like if I was seeing more patients, I would definitely want to use them. I also think it adds a level of professionalism, right? To have something that's very uniform and clear, and they are quite manipulable, the ones that I've played with, in terms of you can change the descriptions, you can add specific instructions, and having those videos as a reference is great. So I actually like them. I actually wish I was using them, but I haven't found them to be useful for what I'm doing where I am in my life now. So.
And I think one argument for these programs and for protocols, such a bad word, right? But when we're talking about research, we have to start somewhere. We have to start from the ground, and we have to start with, a language that we all understand. Techniques that are described well enough that Priya and Carol and you and I can do the same thing. And when we talk about it, we mean the same thing and we have an understanding. So I think this is one of those missing links in this field. I think we're all so excited to be individuals and be creative and treat everyone as individuals that sometimes we're missing the boat with regards to a standard of practice, like a place to start. And so it's going to be really hard for us to prove what we do is better unless we have that, mutual language or standard exercise that we're all doing. Because we can't, if you and I do sit to stands in a very different way, we can't talk about the research of sit to stand as a therapeutic exercise for cruciate cases, right? So we have to somehow balance the creativity and the individuality with the basics. So
my goodness, you're so right. And I haven't even thought of that, but that's such a good point. And if you guys have joined us for the series this month, the exercise physiology series, I just want to tap into one of the things that Leslie Eade was teaching, in that we sometimes get we try and be too creative and change the exercises too much. We should be progressing one exercise to its maximum. So how far can you take your sit to stand? How can you progress it? What are all the various progressions? So instead of creating a really I'm going to say it like this, but a really personalized or individualized exercise program for one patient, we can use our kind of normals and individualize them to that patient to meet that patient's goals by manipulating all the variables around it. How many repetitions, how often, where are we loading, and progress it to its end, instead of every week adding a new exercise or changing the exercises. So if we just think about it like that as well, having a set of 10 exercises is enough to play around with for many, many different conditions and many, many different goals. And with those 10 exercises, we can manipulate all the variables to achieve what we want at the end of the day. And so we can be very specific just with a handful of tools. And we know that most of us have a handful of tools and we're so effective with them. So I just, Priya's laughing out loud. My creativity bubble just got burst. I'm so sorry, Priya. But agree, there needs to be a baseline standard. Definitely, guys, go watch the series, because in terms of our exercise protocols, it's been really eye-opening for me. So someone else says, and do quality exercise techniques versus quantity. For sure, if we're not doing it right, what are we doing? That's one of the things I love about the videos, is that a standardized video is I'm showing you the ideal. This is what we're aiming for. And so it's a good place to aim for. Yes.
Absolutely. It is funny and sorry about the tangent, but I do think it's a really important point. Yeah. And, I remember years ago, and, whatever the manufacturer was, but everyone had these mountains of peanuts and exercise balls and Bosus and Fitbones and this and that, and making these mountains. And, can we teach every dog that we see to walk over these and, walk on a treadmill backwards while they're standing on this? And it was this wow factor in this, therapeutic exercise for dogs is sexy, and it's okay. Let's bring it back. What are we trying to accomplish? What is our goal? What is our outcome? What are we seeing? And I totally agree with Leslie that we need to progress exercise in a very regimented way. We need to show these progressions, and I want the sexy to be the outcome, to be the end result of what we do. Yes, be creative, but let that outcome show what our worth is, and what we're able to do through rehab.
Yeah. And I think our creativity should be in problem solving what the individual dog needs to perform that super boring exercise.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So one of our listeners says that they have a blind client who they need to describe and physically show how to do basic exercises. And that's really helped her to be concise about how to do. That can be really valuable. I like
Yeah,
it.
I think it's really important, and understanding that, your client doesn't learn the way you do. You're probably drawn to rehabilitation because you're very kinesthetic. You're very hands-on. Visually, you're doing a lot of observation, but your pet parent might not learn the best that way. You may need to put your hands on them and show them. You may need to show on their body. You may need to have things written out very, very succinctly, or you may not need to actually, have some flowery language to describe what you're doing so that they understand what it is you're feeling or what you want them to feel. So understanding, how to teach them, how to coach them, how to empower them is really important. And being, certainly sensitive to their needs, is key. We're doing it for them. We're not doing it for ourselves. I think, we get so much from their successes and so much from the outcomes, but we have to remember that our primary goal is to really help and empower them.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great place for us to wrap it up and put a bow on this conversation. This has definitely been, a great one. So thank you so much for everyone for joining us and for participating. You guys make it great. I just have to tell you that. Being able to chat with you is the best. So thank you so much, guys, for joining us. Thank you, Amie.
Thank you. It was great to see you all. Thank you so much. Best of luck. Great week.